Hey, welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Trust Gaming, also presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. Michael McQuaid here, joined by the lads. Thursday night football. The Bucks are playing the Eagles. Delighted to bring everybody into the show as I bring everybody in and take myself off full screen if I can actually do that, even though we're live. I love doing this when we're live. Welcome into the boys. Boys, welcome in. I'll hear from you in a second, but just first off, pinned tweet, we're giving away 2 tickets to the Dolphins against the Jags on Sunday at London, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We'll see you there as well. But let's bring in our guest, Bo Wolf from the Athletic, Philadelphia, big Eagles guy. Bo, a very warm welcome to the Irish NFL show. How are you?
Thanks for having me, guys. I could have gone with like a fake Irish accent, but I thought that might be crossing the line.
It would have been good crack, to be honest. It would have been funny. Have you ever been to Ireland, Bo?
Yeah, I've been to Dublin and Kilkenny. Those are my stops, and but I'd love to go back.
Awesome.
Fantastic time.
When you come back, you'll have to check out Cork and Galway as well, Bo. Two other great cities, and get up north to visit Michael. I'm sure he'll show you around the Giants Causeway and whatnot.
You got a place to stay for me, Michael?
I mean, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, it all happens up here. These guys won't tell you it's better up here than it is down there. But of course, there's always a place to stay. Don't worry.
I think that means he's got a castle for you, Bo. Look, a lot of changes at the Eagles in the off season. Obviously, Nick Sirianni coming in, and saw a tweet earlier in the season which said Nick Sirianni reminds me of the Ted Lasso of the NFL. What do you make of his start to his tenure with the Eagles?
So I've heard the Lasso comparisons. I've made them occasionally myself, and where I think it lines up is in his inability to be anything but sort of his authentic self. Now, I don't think it works necessarily quite as well, and I don't think he's quite as shticky as Lasso is, obviously. But there is something to it where like he sort of can't turn off what his natural personality is, and there is an authenticness to the way that he deals with us and with the players in the locker room. I sort of think about like his job in 3 different silos. And one of those is, culture setter, leader of men, are the guys willing to follow you. And I think he's done a good job on that front. And that's where I think like his lasso-ness, if you will, has done well. The second pillar, because he is also the play caller and he was brought in to, set up this offense, is as, sort of the de facto offensive coordinator. And I think that has been mixed results. They don't really have a week-to-week offensive identity. I have been perplexed at their unwillingness to sort of build the offense around Jalen Hurts' ability as a runner. They have not really done a lot of zone read stuff, and when they do it, it works out very well. I think they're 4th in rushing DVOA, which doesn't even factor in Jalen Hurts' scrambling ability. So to my view, they have sort of been up and down on that front. And then the third pillar for me is sort of game management, in-game stuff. And I think he hasn't done a great job there. He went for it on a couple 4th downs in week 1 and failed. And I think he sort of overcorrected to that and has been a little bit more conservative since then. So, it's still early going. It would be unreasonable to expect a first-time play caller, first-time head coach to be like a finished product 6 games into the season. But so far, I'm a little bit wary, I would say.
Bo, you touched on Jalen Hurts there, and leading into the season, there was a lot of speculation as to whether he was going to be the quarterback in the long term. Obviously, if they got the 2 first-round picks next year, potentially a third if Carson Wentz plays to 75%. Do you feel that the way the season started, he's got that opportunity, or do you still think they're looking further down the line, potentially?
So, I mean, I think they've always sort of had their eyes down the line. Now, Hurts has had this, season sort of audition. And not to repeat myself, but to go back to like them not building the offense around him and his skill sets, it's just sort of like a tell that they don't really think that he can be the guy, and they're not willing to give him that chance. And I think what would worry me as an Eagles fan is if this season is all about finding out if Jalen Hurts is the quarterback and if Nick Sirianni is the head coach. I'm not sure that Jalen Hurts is good enough to give us the accurate read on Nick Sirianni's offense. And I'm not sure that Nick Sirianni is good enough to give us the accurate read on Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. So, it worries me that it could end up being a lost season in that sense. That said, like, their schedule is about to get very easy after tonight's game. There's a good chance they can rack up some wins, get into the wild card hunt. We'll see what happens then. But I worry a little bit about that. And to your point, like, they've got potentially 3 first-round picks next year. At worst, probably 4 picks in the top 50. They've pointed towards next offseason. Everything is pointed that way with money coming off the salary cap, these draft picks. So I think that they are definitely always going to be monitoring the options available at quarterback.
Bo, you said you visited Dublin and Kilkenny, and obviously Kilkenny have been dominant in hurling. Dublin in recent times has been dominant in Gaelic football. But one team who no one expected to be dominant this year was certainly the Philadelphia Eagles. During the off-season, we interviewed Alex Singleton, who was actually a lot more positive.
Nice.
Obviously, I mean, what else is he going to say? But he was like, I think we're going to surprise people. I think we've got a good team unit. And week 1, they came out and they certainly surprised a lot of us. I think with 4 of us had all gone with the Falcons, and they handed them their behinds on week 1. Their only other win since then was last week against the Panthers, which, let's face it, was pretty damn lucky when you consider Sam Darnold's 3 picks, blocking a punt in the last 4 minutes of a game, which is rare, if not nigh on impossible. Am I potentially summing it up a bit too negatively, though? I mean, what's your feeling on the team? Could they make a surprise wildcard push, particularly given the weak division? What's your sense of what the level is going to be like for the rest of the season?
So I don't think that you're too negative, and I think that the Eagles are one of the many teams in the middle who are going to sort of reflect their opponent. I don't expect them to beat the best teams in the league, and I expect them to beat the worst teams in the league, and then it's a coin flip with everybody else. And you look at especially their defense. So they play the Bucs tonight. That will be through 6 games. They will have played 3 of the best 4 offenses in football and 4 of the top 10. Over the next 10 games, they play 1 good offense. They play the Chargers, and that's it. So they do have a chance here to hang around. That's why I thought last week was a huge game, because if you fall to 1-5, potentially it would have been after tonight, it's going to be much harder. You risk, guys sort of not fully buying in for the rest of the season. I think last week's win was huge. After this, they go to Las Vegas, and then they get into, playing teams like the Lions. And then, what's a little bit disappointing for the Eagles is that they don't play the rest of the NFC East until the final 5 weeks of the season. So if they can just sort of tread water and then pick up wins against the Giants and Washington, I think that's possible. I do think that they are a better team than both the Giants and Washington, but we'll just sort of see how, injury attrition plays out over the course of a tough NFL season.
I'm not going to lie, lads. I'm loving the Ted Lasso references as Mark disappears. I'm not sure where he went, but really
He
loving
didn't like the answer.
And also Mark saying Dublin dominant, not anymore, but a different story for a different show. Obviously, Bo, one player that seems to start it very well is wide receiver Devonta Smith. He's had a good start to the season. That touchdown in Atlanta, the opening game, was great. You could argue the 4 wide receivers from this draft, Chase, Waddle, Smith, and Tony, have all started to show their skill set. Have you any early impressions there yourself?
Yeah, I think Devonta Smith is really good. I think he's sort of been the number 1 receiver on this team since the day he showed up at training camp. And that may not be saying much considering the competition on the roster, but he's been really good. He's got the most receiving yards for a rookie through 5 games in Eagles history, behind or ahead of everybody except for Deshaun Jackson. So he's second. And last week, he had 7 catches for 70-something yards or something. He had a fumble, and he's had a few little rookie mistakes, but he's so smooth. He is so ahead of his time, ahead of his age, in just the little things that he does within his routes to get open. I think he's going to be really good. And he has been, people were worried about the size, and he's been playing at that size his whole career. As it's not a new thing for me to say, but he was doing this against SEC competition with those teams trying to stop him as their first priority. And, he obviously had a historic season. So I think he's going to be really good. And I actually think that they need to give him the ball even more. I would like to see him become an even larger part of the offense. And maybe tonight against sort of a banged up Bucs secondary is an opportunity for him to make a big splash on a national stage, international stage.
Indeed. I think I'm probably the most positive about the Eagles on the show, even with you, Bo, because I didn't think they'd win a lot of games, but I thought they'd be entertaining, and they have been. And I mean, I guess I'm a Broncos fan. Watching Jalen Hurts play, the kid has moxie, and he stays in the game. And if I compare him to some of the guys the Broncos have had at QB, I'd certainly take him. And I'm interested in tonight's game. I mean, look, yeah, you're up against Tampa, all of their weapons, you know, that side of things. But we heard Brady give a shout out to Eagles fans, and I'm sure they're going to be giving it to him from first whistle to last.
He deserves it.
Oh, absolutely. But we know that one of the things that the only way you can get to him is pressure. And last weekend against Carolina, the Eagles had 4 players with 6 pressures. Javon Hargrave in particular is having himself a season. They intercept Darnold three times. The Bucs allowed Jacoby Brissett to throw for 275. That's Jacoby Brissett. Is there any potential for an upset this evening?
It's gonna take something crazy. I think it's gonna take some injury or turnover luck, I would guess, because like going up against Brady on a short week. Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, talked about how they can't really afford to like come out with some crazy game plan on a short week because they haven't had practice reps. Like it's just been walkthroughs all week, and so they have to do what like their base defense is, and their base defense is sit back in zone and don't blitz a lot and dare the opposition to drive the ball down the field and not make a mistake. And like Tom Brady, that is just, I mean, that's catnip, right? Like it'll be so easy for him to do that. He's willing to be patient. He gets the ball out so quickly. So it's a bad matchup on that side of the ball. That's why I think it will sort of take some kind of fluky turnover or two. But on the other side, like I do think that the Eagles can move the ball against the Bucs. That Bucs run defense is so good that opposing teams aren't even really trying to run. They're just sticking with the pass, and that's fine for the Eagles. It's hard for me to imagine this game not being something of a shootout, and it's then hard for me to imagine the Eagles winning a shootout under those circumstances. That said, if you're ever going to beat this team, if you're the Eagles, short week at home is probably as good of a chance as any. So we'll see what happens.
Bo, if they are to win this evening, they can sit back and relax this coming Sunday and look out for the results within the division. And for me, 2 surprises in the division is how good Dak Prescott has looked so far and how efficient the Cowboys have looked offensively, and then how poor the defense of Washington football team has been, because last year going into the playoffs, everybody was raving about them and there was such high expectations this year. Are you surprised how it's played out so far?
I'm a little bit surprised at just how good the Cowboys are. I'm with you on that front. I mean, their defense has definitely taken a step forward, and Dak looks, I was worried about the shoulder injury over the summer. I was worried there might be some ramifications of the injury from last season, but he sort of picked up right where he left off. And to me, they look like a Super Bowl contender, at least. They're in that upper echelon right now. So that has surprised me a little bit. Washington has not been as much of a surprise to me. Over year, defense is always a little bit more variable. It's not quite as sticky as offenses are. And so I sort of did expect their defense to take a little bit of a step back. They're not very deep on defense. And, Jack Del Rio is not necessarily like the world's greatest defensive mind. So that didn't surprise me a ton. Obviously, the Ryan Fitzpatrick injury affects things for them. But yeah, I mean, I think like the Eagles, Washington, and the Giants, all of those teams are sort of stacked together. And if it was up to me, I would probably pick the Eagles as the best of those teams. But again, who knows how the schedule plays out and what other injuries come forward over the course of the season.
Bo Daedalus warned Icarus not to fly too close to the sun, and he didn't listen. And there's much to be said about Carson Wentz's injury history, and that he perhaps flew too close to the sun and ultimately brought him back down to ground and now very much to Indiana. The one thing, though, about the Eagles roster, we were commenting in our preseason show, was that there doesn't seem to be a lot of star power around. I mean, you can look at the tight end position maybe as a prime example. And, of course, we all wait as fans with bated breath to see how Jalen Hurts might develop. But for someone who's following the team far more closely and seeing a lot more of them, Are there any underrated players below the radar, effectively, who you think are stars or stars in the making that people shouldn't be sleeping on and maybe should look out for in tonight's game?
Well, first of all, these lead-ins to these questions are fantastic. I appreciate that. So, it's interesting because you're right. And part of that is the way that this roster is structured, which is a result of bad drafting. And that is that the roster is filled with players who are 30 or older, guys who have been around a long time, and really young guys. Like guys in the prime of their career on their second contracts are not to be found on this roster, basically. And that's because they whiffed on a bunch of draft classes. Now, the one guy who is there is a guy who they signed in free agency, and that's Javon Hargrave, who you mentioned, who one of you guys mentioned earlier. And he has been outstanding. I mean, he has been probably the best or second best defensive tackle in the entire league through the first 5 weeks. He's got 6 sacks. He has been just dominant on an every down basis. And it's been sort of refreshing for me because every year in training camp, you're like, wow, that guy is having a great season. I hope he carries it over, just because I want to know if training camp is real. Like what I'm seeing is not lying to me. And usually it's the case where it doesn't follow through. But this year, like Javon Hargrave in camp, day in, day out, was the best player on the field. And throughout these first 5 Eagles games, he has been the best player on the field, as long as they weren't going up against Patrick Mahomes. He's been awesome. And I think you will see him a lot tonight. And because he's next to Fletcher Cox, defenses can't fully key on one or the other of those guys. So it's a good chance. And everybody always talks about Tom Brady get pressure up the middle. If that is true, if it's not just a trope that we always repeat because he's been around for so long, that is where the Eagles would have a chance tonight with those two guys. I think Hargrave is the guy who is going to become a star this season.
Just finally from us, Bo, on tonight's Thursday Night Football, obviously it's been fantastic having you on. Can you maybe first of all tell us where we can get your content up, because we can get The Athletic here in Ireland and in the UK? And secondly, who's your pick for the game and why?
Well, thank you guys very much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter at Bo_Wolf. That's WULF, although I can't necessarily recommend my tweets, but I do think that you might enjoy checking me out on The Athletic. Just search for Bo Wolf on The Athletic if you're a subscriber. And if you are not a subscriber, theathletic.com/birdswithfriends will get you a very nice discount. That's the name of our Eagles podcast that we do with Shil Kapadia and Zach Berman. As for tonight, I want to say that like crazy things can happen on Thursday Night Football, a short week at home. Crowd will be juiced. They love going up against Tom Brady. I just like matchup wise, it's very hard for me to imagine this defense stopping that Bucs offense. And so I'm going to go with the Bucs. I think 35-23 was my prediction. So maybe the Eagles are sort of within a score throughout the whole game, but it doesn't necessarily come down to the wire.
Well, look, we're delighted to have the opportunity to chat to you, and hopefully we can welcome you back on at some point later in the season. And look, you got a castle waiting for you whenever you make it back to Ireland and go up north to visit Michael.
I'm taking you up on that. I want some of those beers you guys are drinking. I can't drink before the game, but when I get to Ireland,
Cheers.
I'm joining you.
Let's launch it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a million. Thank you.
Thanks,
man.
guys. Anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks, both.
Thank you. Bo Wolf from The Athletic. Obviously, you can subscribe to The Athletic Ireland UK in sterling or in dollars. So can you get it in euros yet, boys? I have no idea. I'm not sure.
You can, Mike.
I'll know at renewal time, but
exactly.
it wasn't. You couldn't previously.
We have a few comments here before we get into tonight's show.
Michael, you can also get petrol and diesel down in here.
Right. Grand. That's good. Nice to see you today, Mark. Thanks very much for coming on. I know you've been on and off there for a few minutes, but
Mark's doing the okey cokey.
We have fuel up here. It's England and Wales that didn't the fuel, but like thanks for the joke. I done it in Navan a couple of weeks ago, and I think that's even better.
Yeah, that went down great. Yeah. What comments have you got for us, Michael?
At NI Bronco. Hi guys, great job at the Spurs Stadium last week. Alistair, who's in Bangor, County Down. Alistair, good man. Thanks a million for your comment. Don't know, Colin, that's the guy we met last week. Probably no, it wasn't. We met a guy.
There was a guy in the Broncos jersey who gave us a thumbs up from far away. It might well be Alistair. If it was, hi Alistair.
Bright. I think it was all bright undercover, was it?
There's also a comment saying at Kearns Arcade column ... Please don't fall into that mug. So there you go. There's also a few other comments. The legend is back. # Mark from Owen Farm.
He's
and then
legend
he said,
in that he's a mythical creature at times.
And then he said, "Your Cards got lucky last week." Mark Hogan's the Cardinals fan. Mark Cockrell, unfortunately, is a Patriots fan. But maybe Mark might start supporting the Cardinals at this rate. But there's a few ones. The Falcons were brilliant on
Aeon.
They're an insurance company, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sponsoring now. Fred Flunk.
Here comes Fred to upset me again.
Fred's saying Tampa Bay by 14, and he's also saying, Brian, good to see you talking up the Cowboys. I agree.
I have to be nice. It's great to see Troy Aiken comparing Diggs to Deion Sanders last week. Never mind the 170 yards he got hosed on throughout the remainder of the game, but he did have one interception, and now he's the new Deion Sanders. Give me a bloody break, would you? Troy Aiken. Jeez. Nearly as bad as listening to Tony Romo commentating.
Diggs can't even play, leadoff hitter in baseball. What is he talking about?
We're going to talk Bucks in like 6 or 7 minutes. First off, I know there's a lot to talk about. Mark, welcome back. Where the hell have you been at, mate?
Thanks,
talking about having no fuel. I mean, I could have gone down to Dublin and back by the time. I'm only joking. Welcome back.
No, thanks, buddy. And look, apologies. I wasn't able to join you guys in London last week and work commitments and the like, but looked absolutely amazing. Looking forward to going this weekend, obviously, when you boys do it all over again. I just, visit it for the first time, but looks fantastic. Can't wait to join you, and good to be back with you boys talking some ball. I mean, Michael, you say there's plenty to talk about. I mean, there's been one story fundamentally that's been dominating the airwaves at the moment, which we all know is the first coach to leave their position during 2021. Wasn't necessarily a firing, wasn't necessarily one of the names you would have expected, but the coach with the longest tenure contract in the NFL has left his position. If you haven't been living under a rock for the last while, John Gruden resigning from the Las Vegas Raiders due to various information that came out during the week. I know, was this John's?
We're just talking about fires. This is my fire right now. It's lovely and toasty here. Maybe not as hot as John Gruden's.
I think your carpet looks as old as John Gruden, though.
I know. And I'm renting, Brian. I'm renting until we get the blue ticks on all of our accounts. So,
but look, I mean, Michael, on a very serious note, there's many people have already commented on this, and there's lots of different ways and takes you can take on it. Obviously, from a European perspective, an American perspective on the challenges of race, and especially race in professional sports, doesn't necessarily resonate. We don't live in the same culture and get the same experiences. We haven't lived the same shared experiences. This is why, as an international community, for example, Germany's views on privacy laws are very different. This is all about historical context and what people have lived through and experienced. But Gruden's comments and emails that have come to light, I mean, I think it was inevitable. There was no other way to go, especially when you consider the organization. I know you guys are Broncos fans, but of all the organizations, we talk about the Steelers and what they brought to the community. You look at what the Raiders have stood for when it comes to nature of diversity. You look at what Al Davis stood for. When you think of Art Shell, first black head coach in the NFL, Tom Flores, the first Latino quarterback, and subsequently first person of color to win a Super Bowl as a head coach for the Raiders. Amy Trask, first female chief executive. Al Davis used to refuse to play games in cities where black and white players would have to be segregated and stay in separate hotels. So they have demonstrated class as a community, as a franchise, as an organization, and as a family in many respects. Obviously, it's where their wealth comes from. They're not the Jerry Joneses and the Robert Krafts of this world. Most of the Davis family fortune is based in the Raiders. So for something like this to happen, I think that franchise obviously would have taken the relevant steps if Gruden himself hadn't. And that's one of the things I think is a byproduct of, the person does not represent the franchise, even if he was the head coach.
Yeah.
I think Mark summed it up very well. Just, I suppose, one point just on the nature of the story last weekend, it was becoming more evident as the weekend went on that the league were putting the Raiders or Gruden in a position where one of them had to make that decision rather than the league getting involved and suspending him or removing him from the league. Because gradually as the weekend went along, numerous emails were starting to come out, and it was a case of we'll continue to present this information until ultimately you make the decision. So it went from one email last Friday to dozens, and to be honest, I'd imagine it's only the tip of the iceberg, and you'd wonder who else out there is kind of what was this term I read this week, hiding in the long grass, because there's people like Bruce Allen and others that potentially could be next up in terms of investigations to come.
Well, as a fan of a team in the AFC West, obviously hatred for the Raiders, but taking all that aside, I think, Colin, it's very disappointing, isn't it? Just to see in this day and age that's been going on.
Yeah, I think Randy Moss's comments last Sunday were, he put it better than I think anyone at that point, and Gruden had to go. But look, we're going to see, as Brian has alluded to, I saw a great tweet from Mike Freeman earlier where he said the NFL is making a simple cold-blooded calculation. PR damage of not releasing the emails on a scale to 1 to 10 is 3. PR damage of releasing them is 1 billion. Doing the right or wrong thing isn't part of that calculation. There's a long way to go in this. There are other people on the other side of those emails. This was an investigation into the Washington football team. We will see. I will just one quick point on what has been Brandon Staley's comments on this. I thought were outstanding. He showed real leadership, and the Chargers are proving that rookie QBs and rookie HCs do not need extended time in this league to look like real pros and to be real leaders. Justin Herbert was outstanding from moment one. Brandon Staley thus far has been absolutely outstanding as a head coach. In every time he steps to the podium, he's impressive.
And Colin, can I just add to that? I was going to mention Brandon Staley as well, who's unbelievable and puts into a dark context the comments by some other commentators, like Tony Dungy's initial defense of Gruden's comments. And Tony Dungy, has done a lot of good in this world, has rehabilitated players and has been there as a voice for things. But it's like, there are things that deserve criticism at times and not explanation and understanding and forgiveness in respect of it. My CEO is a great expression he used on a regular basis. He said, trust is earned in drops, but lost in buckets. And that's the reality of what we just saw unfold. And in terms of calling out people who have an amazing take on this, Ryan Clark's comments as well the other week when he talked about the privilege exercised by Gruden in assuming that he can make these statements, then say, but I'm not going to talk about them. Searing, but fantastically analyzed by a former player in the league who has obviously lived in that culture.
We are delighted now to be joined by our next guest on the show this week, a guy that has covers the Bucs on The Athletic, spent 19 years at the Tampa Bay Times. Delighted. This is the second person we've had Carmen Vitale on before, but now we're delighted to welcome Greg Allman to the Irish NFL show. Greg, ahead of Thursday Night Football, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on game day as well. A very warm welcome into the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Greg, obviously, I'm sure you know yourself by now. You don't need an introduction, but a lot of people here support Man United. We have the Glazer aspect to an extent, but have you any Irish heritage yourself?
I do not. No, I'm actually in my hometown of Philadelphia, born here, and happy to be back here. That's as close as I get to back home for you guys.
Greg, I suppose one of we see that Tom Brady is going to be playing with some sort of thumb injury. Though I imagine if Tom, he had his hand in plaster cast, he'd find a way to play, such as his ability and his robustness. But how is that likely to impact him? Or is it serious? Might we see him hand off to Lenny a little more this evening?
I don't think it's a huge thing. He played the entire second half last week with the bad thumb. He went 15 for 18 with 3 touchdowns after the injury. So some of that could kind of be just the adrenaline of pushing through a game. We saw kind of have a glove on the hand, have the hand wrapped at the podium when he talked. I don't think it's a huge thing. He's actually played through worse hand injuries on his passing hand, his throwing hand. I think he'll be fine. I think it'll be business as usual. If he were to hurt it again, if he were to take another hit there or hit it again on another helmet, then maybe you'd have more problems than you would just starting out a game from scratch. But otherwise, I don't think it'll be a huge factor.
Greg, numerous injuries on the defense, in particular in the secondary. But I suppose last week it really wasn't exposed because the game was comfortable enough come, mid third quarter, towards the back end of the third quarter. Is there a concern that at some stage that this is going to catch up with them? Potentially not tonight, before they're down the line.
Yeah, it could. I mean, luckily they're kind of in a run of largely lesser opponents and lesser quarterbacks they're facing. Tonight will be the first full game without Levante David. Especially against a mobile quarterback, that's probably, taking defensive speed off the field isn't a thing. They've played okay without Winfield. They've obviously gotten used to being without their top two corners. Having Pierre-Paul probably helps at the line of scrimmage for sure to get someone back from injury. But yeah, they're definitely shorthanded. That's 4 legit defensive starters that won't be there tonight. It's something they've been able to overcome before, and I think they'll be okay with that tonight.
Michael, you're up. Marcus, go on. There you are. Oh, he's back.
He's here. Sorry. Apologies, Greg.
The beauty of live shows.
Unfortunately,
turn,
I'm
Mark.
as spotty as the Tampa Bay secondary at the moment, so that's on the internet coverage. I was going to say, actually, Greg, Davis Island has Tampa General Hospital, I believe. I think you can find most of the Tampa secondary in there.
Very good.
Look, it's very difficult to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the moment without talking about Tom Brady. I mean, he might have won a Super Bowl or two. I can't remember it. It's a hazy memory for me. But one of the underrated aspects is he's actually on course this year at the moment to potentially become the first player to break 6,000 yards. I think he's averaging 351 yards per game. And he's doing it at the moment without Gronk, perhaps an over-reliance upon Antonio Brown. We haven't seen Scotty Miller in the passing offense much this season at all, who obviously had an amazing performance at times during last year, not least in Green Bay. It still seems that they've not really reached their potential. Like, the running game is pretty ineffective. I mean, what's your take on the offense and where you see the evolution going, hopefully, for the Bucs during the rest of this season?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I think they literally are overloaded at so many positions offensively, where you have so many receivers that you don't even really notice that Scotty Miller is gone. I do think they've missed Rob Gronkowski, especially in the red zone. But you have O.J. Howard and Cam Brate, who are solid tight ends. And at the very worst, you can lean on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, who are all healthy right now. So I think as long as those three are healthy, as is Tom Brady, the rest are secondary parts right now. The run game not being 100% is, I mean, Leonard Fournette, I think, has actually come a long way in the last 2 weeks. It has played very well. This is an Eagles defense that's 30th against the run in the NFL. No one has run the ball more times against any team than the Eagles. So I would think, as much as the Bucs like to skew towards the pass, I think this is a good week to take it easy on Tom Brady's injured thumb and maybe run the ball 35 times instead of 20 times, maybe to throw 25 times instead of 45. The game is going to dictate that. If they're ahead, they're going to run more. If they fall behind for some reason, they're going to throw more. But I do think, to some extent, this is a team that has offensive balance the way they want it, maybe more so now than they did at the beginning of the year. If they can control the game, they can highlight or diminish any part of this offense they want to, whether it's by injury or for matchup advantages. They kind of have that freedom because they have so many things to choose from.
You mentioned about balance, Greg. Maybe they can take a note from up the road with Urban Meyer and do 250 and 250 on rushing and passing like he wants.
The first 250 is what's hard to come by. Throwing for 250, that's like the Bucs do that in half some weeks. Rushing for 250, that's like, even if you get to run the ball 40 times, that's a really good 40 carries to get to 250. You need one of those 98-yard Ronald Jones specials to help you get closer to that. Even 150, honestly, if they had 30 for 150 tonight, I think they'd count that as a major victory.
I personally can't wait to hear Mark's questions to Urban Meyer on Sunday in London, but that's a different topic for a different show. Greg, I'm going to take you back to St. Patrick's Day 2020, when the week the whole world shut down with COVID and stuff. But look, when this Brady news came out, obviously it was on St. Patrick's Day here, but even at that moment, did you ever think, it was going to be the Bucs until it obviously started becoming evident? Did any part of you think it's going to be the Bucs? Because it must have been from then until now your experience covering this team.
Oh, yeah.
Must have just been it's a complete roller coaster.
Yeah, it changes everything. And it's funny because you go back to that offseason, and even late in the year, there was talk that, Brady might move. And I was probably almost rude in how quickly I would dismiss it initially, in that it's like, look, Tom Brady is not leaving the Patriots. And if he did, he's not coming to the Buccaneers. They're a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in 13 years. And I don't think I remember the combine is when Bruce, I remember the whole thing, spring 2020 was like, gosh, could they maybe not franchise Jameis Winston and expose him to free agency and the potential loss? And that was a big thing. And then at the combine, we kind of said, well, like, what's an example of a quarterback you'd be willing to pick up the phone for that would make you risk not having Winston back? And he just said, Tom Brady, kind of matter-of-factly. So I don't think it really felt real until he had that tweet where he kind of said goodbye to the Patriots fans. And that was like, wow, he's relieving. And then once it's at that point, it's like, who are you up against here? I mean, like the Titans kind of committed to Tannehill. The Chargers, you felt like, West Coast would be a big change for him. And it just kind of came together. And once it happened, it was real. It's just a process of what it's like. I mean, I think last year being COVID as it was, not really being face-to-face, we had Brady on Zooms. I was close to Brady here talking to you guys as I was with him that first year. So you weren't aware of him as much because of that. There was like a disconnect. But to see the change in the relevance of this team nationally, internationally. Again, I'm talking to you guys half a world away, and you know what it meant. It changes everything. I don't think there's a player you could add in the NFL right now that would change the visibility and the identity of a franchise as quickly as adding Tom Brady did here.
Greg, you may have heard us obviously beforehand discussing the situation, and we're not going to get into that again, but there's a vacancy in Las Vegas, and you have two very good coordinators there in Tampa Bay. Is it a possibility that they could be tempted during the season to go, or would they more likely want to wait and play this out?
Yeah, you don't really see employed NFL coaches leaving for other jobs in season. And not really even in the college game that much at all. So the problem is that Vegas is first in line now. They've set the nice thing about firing your coach in or accepting his resignation in week 6 is that you have a head start on the rest of the league. You can start the process of who you want. And the challenge that all NFL teams face is, are you willing to wait for someone? Because right now they'll be tempted to try and negotiate with someone who's not a current head coach. I mean, there are good coaches that aren't employed right now that would be viable. The sooner a candidate's season ends, the worse his team was. So the problem is that when you have the first opening in the NFL, the temptation is to make the first hire. And you don't necessarily get to do that. The best hire sometimes, and we remember these Chiefs teams, obviously the Bucs kind of benefited last year from not being available until February. So Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich, probably more so Leftwich right now, just because the offense is playing, will be very much candidates for head coaching openings. The continued success of this team with every win they have that validates what they did last year, it helps them as candidates. Todd Bowles has been a head coach, obviously very well respected as a coordinator. Byron Leftwich to be a play caller in a championship offense, as much as some people want to put that on Brady or on the fact that he's running a Bruce Arians offense. Leftwich is 3 years younger than Brady is. So to be a minority candidate, to be an offensive-minded candidate on a playoff championship level team, those are 3 really strong assets for a coaching candidate. So my question, I guess, is just which teams are willing to wait this year until the Bucs are done with their seasons, because you can't really get too much done with a candidate until they're done and they're able to focus on their future instead of their present.
Greg, you touched on Jameis Winston. Obviously, he's playing for a rival within the division now, who's had a reasonably better start, than more people would have expected with the drop-off, with Drew Brees leaving. How do you foresee this division playing out? Do you think it will remain competitive? Are you surprised by how well the Saints have started? The Panthers looked good at the start, but I think it's evident they're so reliant on McCaffrey. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on the division as a whole.
Yeah, I had thought going in. I think most people thought the Saints would be the top challenger to the Bucs in this division. I think to see how well things have taken for Winston. For him to have 12 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in 5 games is outstanding. That points to him taking care of his mistakes, limiting his turnovers, which was always the big hurdle here in Tampa. And as a result, the Saints defense has probably been better than expected as well. They've done all this so far without Michael Thomas playing it down. So I do think you have to consider them right now. I think that's the only real big game they have between now and Buffalo in December. I mean, you look at their next 7 opponents, I think they all have losing records right now except New Orleans. So that Halloween game in the Superdome in New Orleans suddenly looms as a really big game for them. I mean, if they can get a win there, it'll create some separation. They'll have like 2 games in hand midway through the season for the division lead. But if they can't go in there and win, suddenly all the things that they're trying to line up this year, I mean, the differences they can have in this year versus last year are in where they play their playoff games. I mean, last year they didn't win the division. They went 3 playoff games in a row on the road, which is not how Tom Brady usually does things to get to a Super Bowl. So the expectation is that this is a different path this year and that they can win the division. They can even maybe contend for a bye in the NFC, where not only are you home, you're playing one less game to get to the Super Bowl. But to do that, the first thing they have to do is beat the Saints and create some separation. If you can do that, now your worries in the last month of the season are going to be about seeding. What can you clinch when? And New Orleans is probably the only team right now that's in the way of that. Carolina, the fact that they get Carolina twice in the last 3 weeks could make it interesting if they stumble, if they lose some of these games in the next month, these Eagles and Bears and Jets and those games like that they should win, but don't necessarily. I mean, we remember the Bears game last year was a game they should have won and didn't. If they take care of business, a lot of things might be in hand by the time they get to the Panthers and they get to week 17, 18, those kind of games.
The Bears game where Tom was looking for five downs. Yeah.
That's a Thursday night on the road. After
he's an old man. We get forgetful sometimes. That's the only thing. Look, you mentioned Jameis, Brian. You got to feel sorry for Jameis. He heard that ESPN were big into 30 for 30, so he tried to match it with his touchdown interceptions. But anyway, Greg, I love the fact that we're talking about Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles. I mean, for Game of Thrones fans, like the faith and the crown are the 2 pillars that hold up this world, and Leftwich and Bowles have obviously been 2 critical pillars for the Bucs along the way. One of the things that goes under the radar, I feel, is the fact that obviously both of them played in the league. I mean, Bowles was a safety for a number of years, Leftwich obviously a quarterback with the Steelers and, a backup at times as well. But how much do you see that on the ground when you're around the team, around the players, around the interaction with the offensive and defensive coordinators? Do you think that actually is an attribute that really helps them in their role and what the relationship with the players and the team is like there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think your best coaches are usually former players, ideally at their old positions. I mean, it helps. I think it helps Byron especially in that Byron has literally been a quarterback in Bruce's offense. He knows what Bruce expects. He understands the difficulties that come with this offensive system. He's almost uniquely suited for it in that to have someone with coaching experience who's been a player literally as younger than Brady is, but has gone through some of the same challenges that Brady has. I don't think anybody's going to tell Brady a whole lot that he doesn't know, but what he doesn't have a lot of experience with is Bruce and this offense. So that's what makes Leftwich especially good to kind of bridge the gap between Bruce and Tom Brady. I think Bowles on the other side has all the instincts you have as a former player to know. I think the league has changed a lot defensively since Todd Bowles played safety in this league. But again, Kevin Ross was a great cornerback in this league. Larry Foote was an amazing linebacker in this league. You see these, and it doesn't take away from who Nick Rapone is as a safeties coach that he didn't play safety in the NFL. But I think, especially for younger players, having someone they can relate to, it helps in a meeting if you've said, trust me, I know this is tough. When we went up against Jerry Rice, it was hard too. You can give them stories that will put what they're dealing with in perspective. Foote played with Bruce in Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of familiarity to where what Bruce likes to talk about is not having to coach your coaches, making sure your staff is an extension of yourself. I think it almost is better for the Bucs to have all of their coaches back, save Antoine Randall L. All of your coaches back is almost better than all of your players because we're not sure how the new offense is going to look. We're not sure if the pass rush is going to be the same. He knows exactly what everyone in that room does because he's worked with them before here in Tampa, and chances are for decades before that. So the familiarity on this staff is amazing and probably a big part of why they are on the same page as well as they are.
Greg, just want to thank you for coming on a Thursday Night Football show. Obviously, game day, you're a busy man. Just 2 things before we go. Actually 3 things. First off, we know you'll be down the stretch in January, so you're welcome on anytime. Hopefully we'll get you on again this season. Secondly, can you maybe let us know about the Athletic and how we can find you? And finally, who have you got tonight in the game, the Bucs or the Eagles?
Who do I have tonight? If I had to pick right now, I don't think I've actually had to pick on any of these podcast or radio hits. The Bucs are like a touchdown favorite, and it's been interesting because not having Levante David, not having Gronk, it hasn't really changed the line. I think everyone just thinks they're a touchdown favorite. So I tend to think right now that they're going to be able to score pretty well on this Eagles team. I don't know if the defense will show up as they have the last 2 games, holding teams to 17 points. But I kind of feel confident the Bucs can get in the 30s without even really straining a whole lot. You look at Dallas, you look at Kansas City, they both scored in the 40s on this team. So right now I like the Bucs to win and to cover. This feels, again, kind of like a 35-24, 35-21 type game right now if I had to pick.
Greg, I'm jealous that you're back in your old neighborhood and getting to enjoy Philly cheesesteaks, but we'll let you go and enjoy your time in your old stomping ground. And look, thanks again for taking the time to chat to us, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again in January.
All right, guys, thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it. You guys enjoy the game tonight.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
All the
Greg.
best, Greg. See
Thank
you,
you.
man.
Bye-bye.
And you can catch Greg on The Athletic, as we said previously with the last guest. You can sign up to The Athletic monthly subscription, and just obviously thanks a million for Greg coming on. The comment about the cards was aimed at a different viewer. So just a heads up. And it wasn't you, Mark, don't worry. I know you're on the search for a new team, but
No, Michael, nobody can confuse me. And no, don't worry, I'm never on a search for another team. Just the Patriots' next dynasty is just beginning, mate.
there are a few comments here. I'm just checking here now. Owen Farrell, there. Sorry, the first one said Mike Mayock can draft the players he wants to now, but he's also saying there, very poor of Washington football team with the announcement of the retirement of Sean Taylor, number 21, at the next home game.
Can I make a point on that? Can I make a point on
Yeah.
2 of them? The first
Go for it.
one. Gruden employs a coach by the name of David Rotanto, and he puts him on the second floor and tells him to do all the analysis on the college players for the drafts. And on the floor above him, Mike Mayock was doing the exact same job. So that kind of shows you the relationship which him and Mike Mayock had. And on the other one, that's pure deflection from Washington for Sunday's game. They know that the enormity of what's going on over the week, the scrutiny is going to be on that organization. It has been for quite some time. And for a player who was a really good player and how he lost his life was tragic, to have a situation where they announce his retirement jersey 3 days before the game, it's bad form. It's pretty poor. That type of stuff is announced at the start of the season. Well,
It's outrageous. Honestly, it's completely disrespectful to his family, and to use that and a player who they know fans respond to, like he is absolutely worshipped, and rightly, he's an absolute legend amongst their fan base. To use that to deflect is absolutely ridiculous, and Washington should be ashamed of that.
And the good thing is, a lot of Washington fans have come out today. Well, not it's a good team, but it's evident across all teams and all supporters that this is something that they've put together to try save face for something.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Michael. I was surprised in the first instance that his number hadn't already been retired. It was one of those, wait, hadn't they retired that already? Because A, they should have, and B, just like the guys have said. I mean, there aren't really words to properly describe how cheap, lousy, naive, impotent, pathetic, disgraceful what they're doing in relation to the memory of Sean Taylor. And I mean, do you expect anything different from the franchise? I mean, at this stage, no. You really don't.
There's only one good thing that can come out of this on Sunday, Michael, and I'm sure you'll feel the exact same sentiment. Paddy goes in and gives them a good beatdown.
I will say it's the owner, I feel, rather than the franchise. I mean, look, Washington have some great fans, great history at that, but that current owner.
Yeah, I mean the owner. When I say the franchise, Colin, you're absolutely right, and no disrespect to the fans or the team and the players.
Well, there is no. That's the problem now. The fans have given up on it. If you look at the match last weekend at home to the Saints, there was practically half the stadium was empty. Now it'll probably be full this weekend because Chiefs will travel, and the fact that Mahomes is coming to town, it will get a crowd in. But it's been called out on numerous shows this week how disappointingly poor average attendance there, and it has been for quite some time. So obviously the fans are disgruntled with the whole situation as well.
Well, Michael, we'll have to get Anton de Beek back on and have you edit a 50-minute conversation down to 15 minutes again.
He's a busy man at the minute, though. He's a busy man at the minute. He's Anton is now a judge on Strictly, or whatever you boys call it down the water there, Dancing with the Stars. I would like to thank Brian O'Leary for reminding me that Patrick Mahomes was on my bench and I was starting Tom Brady. Thank you. Just change it up there on fantasy. Look, we need to do our picks because we need to get some rest, boys, before London. But is there any final points anybody wants to make before we get the picks presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange?
As far ahead of the picks, I have a funny feeling I know where we're going with it.
Okay. Here we go. Presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. Good to have Mark back on the show again as well to do that. Excited. Yeah, feeling good. Everyone's good ahead of it. Right. Eagles 2-3, Bucks 4-1, presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. Code Irish NFL Show gets you a bonus on your initial deposit in both sterling and yo-yos. 18 plus. Gamble aware. Only gamble what you can afford. Colin, Mr. Fermoy from Cork. Who you got?
Well, I can imagine what everyone is going to go with, but Bo said, is it a trope that Brady doesn't like pressure up the middle? No, it's not. It's fact. We had Wade Phillips tell us that. And if there's anyone who can get pressure up the middle, it is this Eagles team. And you heard Brady during the week. Look, Seattle have the 12th man, and the Raiders have the black hole, and everyone likes to think they have raucous fans. They are lunatics in Philly, in the best possible way, and they are going to make it uncomfortable for Brady and his injured finger. Hargrave is having an absolute fantastic season. They intercepted Sam Darnold 3 times. There are ways. I mean, they gave up, as I said, 275 yards to Jacoby Brissett, and Lavonte David is out as well. So I can see a way that this Eagle team can win. I really can, but you can't bet against Brady. So I'm going the Bucs.
Yeah, in a season where the Bucs offense is averaging around 30, I think it's 33.5 points per game, and the only game where they've really been held up is that game in New England, where Bill put a good plan in place to slow them down, but they rebounded last week, and there's concerns around the Eagles' defense, and for me, the Bucs will put up enough points. I think in a way, I look at it similar to the Cowboys game against the Eagles on Monday night. The Eagles put up over 20 points, but the reality is when you're going up against an offense as good as the Bucs and as good as the Cowboys have been this season, it's very difficult to hold them down. So for me, Brady's 9-1 after having 3 days rest throughout his career. He's going to hit the magical 10 tonight. Bucs to win and cover that -7, which Greg alluded to, which you can get on matchbook.com.
Greg also alluded to the mobility, actually, of Jalen Hurts as a runner. And there was a little moment, I think, in week 1 and 2, you were kind of wondering, hey, the Eagles trying to develop almost like a Baltimore North here. Are they trying to evolve an approach with lots of read option, great running game, kind of mirroring a little bit what Lamar Jackson is doing in Baltimore with John Harbaugh, obviously. There's only 2 slight problems for that. One is Jalen Hurts isn't as good a runner as Lamar Jackson, and B is he definitely can't throw the ball as good as Lamar Jackson. And I don't know if that's a compliment in the best of times either. At time, fairness, Lamar did go 37 for 43 and 400 odd yards. So.
300 yards and 400 yards in his last 2 games.
I did correct.
Welcome Vic Fangio to the show. Oh, hello, Vic. You don't think Lamar can throw the ball? Oh, he's going to show you.
Colin, in fairness, prior to that game in Denver, he hadn't thrown for over 250 yards in 17 games in a row.
I know. He listened to you tell him that he hadn't thrown for 250 yards, and he's got another 2 weeks in a row.
I was there all week.
I was like big fan of the show, Lamar Jackson.
Boys, all right, boys. Calm the bomb.
Anyway, Michael, I was about to allude to John Harbaugh's disappointment as well of losing that rushing record that was so important, obviously, when they didn't crack 100 yards against the Colts on Monday night. But that being said, the one problem is you can't, the Bucs secondary is vulnerable. We've seen it actually in all the games so far. But their run defense is pretty strong still. I watched that Patriots game. The Patriots ran for -1 yards in relation to that game. So the way in which the Eagles might attack can be protected. Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry, still can't throw the ball accurately more than 15 yards down the field. He can get lucky every now and then, but he has not shown he is a deep ball thrower. And the other point is Tom Brady, as Bo was alluding to, will pick and tip and chuck his way down the field against a very soft secondary. It's the Bucs all the way.
Forget about the 7.5 spread. Let's go 14.5.
Let's see.
No. Come on. The Bucs are going to win this game. It's not happening for the Eagles tonight. And you know what? I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning at like 4 in the morning. Be like, oh my God, what a performance in the Eagles. No, I think the Bucs will win this comfortably. I think it'll be over by halftime. I honestly, boys, I think all this Brady injury talk is bull. And I think they're trying to get the Eagles to plan effectively on the run. I think Brady's going to go out and throw it 350 yards, 4 touchdowns.
I think he's fortunate if he has a thumb injury. He's still playing at the right. He's at the time of year where the weather is still not too adverse. If this was a game towards late November and he had a thumb injury, might see a different situation. I know he's used to playing in cold weather, but I'm just saying, still have an adverse reaction to it.
Yeah. I mean, he's had thumb injuries.
New England, Mark, yeah.
Yeah, he's had thumb injuries in January, Michael. There was a small AFC Championship game.
Oh, yeah, against the Jags.
Brian.
Jesus.
Sure, he'll be fine.
Do you remember the Jaguars were 1 game away from the Super Bowl? Like, Jesus Christ. Like that, boys, that was...
Sure, that game away, yeah. Actually, there was a fumble then, which that was returned for a touchdown. Then it wasn't a fumble, even though it was a fumble. But then, sure, the photograph last week of Brady, Sherman, and the referee and say, it's great to see three guys together as teammates again.
I can believe it. And I also can believe that we're going to be in London this Sunday morning, 9 a.m., live with the Irish NFL show from opposite Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Got some breaking news, a special guest this week on the show. Mark Cockerell will be live on Sunday morning from Tottenham. I'm just excited to do it. Then we're all in the stadium after. We're going to annoy Roger Goodell, etc. And let's see how we all behave. But looking forward to it, boys, this Sunday. And also call them meet up on Saturday night.
Meet up on Saturday night in the Fiddler from 7 o'clock. Be delighted to see people there. It should be a good night in anticipation of Sunday. And I think this could be, and we'll give our pick Sunday, but this could potentially be the week when a rookie QB does get a victory in London, or is in with a shout anyway.
Yeah,
Brian, we're giving away 2 tickets as well.
Are we? Okay, grand. That's fantastic news. I know it's great to give fans an opportunity to win tickets. We did last week, and it was well received by, I can't recall the name, the guy who won, but it was well received, and obviously he had reason for wanting to be in London to see family, so he was delighted, and hopefully we can, make someone's weekend and give 2 tickets away to them as well. But for the game itself, no rookie, as I touched on last week, no rookies ever won in London. Didn't happen last weekend. And be interested to see what comes of Trevor Lawrence. And Tua's back as well, so it's the matchup that we were hoping for, Tua against Trevor, and I'm looking forward to seeing Tua as well.
And Mark, not forgetting this new hero of the show. I still have no idea who this guy is, but just one final appearance. Is he going to be there on Sunday? I want to meet him on Sunday.
It's not Sunday you want to be concerned about. It's Saturday night when Limo arrives in.
I'll be on the Deep River Rock, boys. I'll be on the Deep River Rock.
He's going to get his driver. He's going to get his driver to bring him over. It'll be a bit like the end of the Commitments. If you've heard of that film, Michael, I know you're a very young lad, but at the very end of the film, when he comes looking for Gallagher's, only to find out that it's closed. And I'd say that could be what Liam's situation is on Sunday, when he rocks up into Kilbourne, only to find out that the bar is closed and his driver takes him on home. He's due to go to a charity event on Saturday night, but he plans to join us. And he said he's really looking forward to having a chat with you.
But Michael, Limo might be there, but there's a couple of Dolphins who haven't even got on the plane, which is going to affect their team on Sunday. And I know we'll break it down in more detail on Sunday for everybody watching the show, but I want everybody to bear in mind one of the key stats of this season already. The great, wonderful Urban Meyer, and obviously the rookie phenom Trevor Lawrence, unfortunately are presiding over a team that has now lost 20 games in a row.
Oh, here.
And
You can't go to the press conference on Sunday with that.
Well,
Hold on,
well,
who's
my-
going to each press? We can't do that.
Michael, I mean, I could refer them to the 1976, 1977 expansion Bucks as they're playing tonight, who lost 26 in a row. Or we could go back to the Chicago Cardinals in the 40s, who lost 29 in a row. But we are verging on historic levels of ineptitude. Even the Browns, in the depths of despair, didn't lose 20 in a row, I don't believe. So, you know, they're going to make, they're on the way to make history, Michael. But London might be their saving grace.
Well, Mark and Brian are going to go to the winning locker room on this Sunday, I think, by the sounds of it. Because I don't think anybody's going to be looking forward to metaphors at the end. But look, boys, looking forward to it. I want to thank everybody that's watched the show over the last few weeks. Everyone watched last Sunday, Monday, Thursday. The time for talk is over. We are London bound in about 36 hours. Avec Bells on. Conor going tomorrow to London as well. Looking forward to it, boys. See you live Sunday morning. And I guess until then, it's long as well.
Saturday night in the Fiddler. And don't forget, the Irish NFL show is available in podcast format if you are looking to catch up on your commute to London.
See you in Belfast International Airport at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. Somebody is buying the pints. Good luck.